Well, my question is, speaking of how we're sort of going back to the past, what is your opinion of this new agreement that Panama has with the United States that, in the words of the U.S. government, quote, enhances the U.S. military presence in your
Uh, to me, is unnecessary. Uh, it doesn't accomplish anything, neither for the states nor for Panama. It creates a feeling of repulsiveness. People don't understand it, and really, there's no reason for having that agreement. I mean, we have had an excellent relationship with the United States since we signed the treaties, and that sort of brings back, in effect, like you said, brings back things from the past that we don't want to remember, much less revisit. So I don't understand. The security of the Panama Canal depends basically on its neutrality. If everybody wants to can use it, nobody wants to destroy it. If on the contrary, you forgive you don't allow certain countries to use it, then there's a reason to attack it. So it really doesn't make any sense at all.
But the United States says it needs to provide security, enhanced security for the canal because
That's
of the new world that we're living in.
That's exactly the point. The security is based on the neutrality of the Panama Canal. And tell me something. How are you going to secure the Panama Canal when it was built back in 1917? If you look at the entrance of the canal, they're not straight, they're slanted. Because back then, a submarine could send a torpedo into the canal. That doesn't exist anymore. What they use is intercontinental ballistic missiles. How are you going to defend that by being here in Panama? It doesn't make any sense. Militarily, politically, relationship with Latin America, with Panama, it just doesn't make any sense.
Why is it offensive to the Panamanians and to also other Latin Americans?
Because of our history. We had a colonial presence here for many, many years, and we don't forget those shameful years.
So that's the reason.
Sure.
So this, if it is so useless and so absurd, then why does it? It's still, you hear the United States and you hear the current government saying, "Oh, it really is nothing." It doesn't. Panama controls it all, but it does mean more boots on the ground that weren't here.
Well, supposedly it doesn't. Supposedly it's a training sort of a situation whereby they'll bring people in, bring people out, train people out. But I mean, there's no reason for that, really. It creates a bad atmosphere in our relationship. It creates questions in everybody's minds with no answers, or at least not obvious answers. So it's not really understandable from a reasonable point of view. But then again, this government of the United States is not reasonable. In fact, they are painted by being unreasonable everywhere, in every political move that they make, and led by a guy that bases his policy on lies. They started by saying that the Panama Canal was under the influence of Chinese people. Where? Where are they? And then we have a visit by one guy, the Secretary of State. He says something here in Panama, turns around and says something else in the States. He says that he saw all the signs in Panama in Chinese. You have to really be a liar to say something like that. But they base their policy on those lies. It's incredible. It sounds very much like Nazi at the beginning, don't it?
Speaking of, would you say that Panama is the word being bullied and blackmailed? Does that apply to what's just happened?
I think it's been bullied, and I don't think it's blackmail because we can stand up to it. bullied, no question. I mean, by all the lies that they've said about Panama, all the needs that they supposedly have to clean Panama out of some Chinese bad influence. With all due respect, that's BS.
Mm. And so, why did this government then cave into those?
I guess it's because of the pressure. I really don't know. I have no contact, nor have I discussed this with them. But they still insist that this is an MOU that really doesn't go any further than MOUs that had been signed in the past. But I'll tell you something though. They insisted on having an MOU with me, back in my administration, to have a hidden military base and refused to sign it. That cost me my U.S. visa, which is a medal that I carry.
With honor. Well, it seems like you carry it with honor. But tell me one more thing, which I find very, very significant. You're saying that this puts into jeopardy or into question the neutrality.
Yes, it is this memorandum of understanding. If it isn't against the neutrality treaty, it's within one step close to violating that treaty. Okay, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an international, but the neutrality treaty is based on the fact that everybody has the same rights to cross the Panama Canal with the same conditions. If you violate that and favor one country or prohibit another country, then you have a conflicting situation.
But China hasn't been prohibited from using it.
No, not yet. Not yet. But nobody tells me that is not in the back of their mind if the conflict with China were to escalate. Not with us, with them, for them.
Yes, and the fact that the United States has even troops that are coming here for exercising, and that it's using Sherman for training in jungle warfare and all kinds of things like that, doesn't that even in itself present a violation of the neutrality treaty? I mean, how can you be a neutral country if you have only one country coming in here to use your
Well, we
former
shouldn't have any.
bases?
Not only is it a violation of the neutrality treaty, I think, but it's a violation of the Panamanian Constitution as well. Because the Panamanian Constitution says very clearly that the only armed forces that exist in Panama, that could exist in Panama, are the Panamanian ones. So this is, it might be a ground for a ruling by the Supreme Court if there was a complaint about it. Yes.
So it's like sort of on the borderline.
I think it is a very borderline type thing. They're not one more step could be a violation of the neutrality treaty. Yeah. And I don't want to even know what that step would be.
Yes, I can imagine. Okay, so what? All this began when President Trump decided that he wanted to, quote, take back the Panama Canal, and in his address to the Congress very recently, he said he ordered his Secretary of State to take it back and make that a priority.
Yeah. Well, the same thing he said with Greenland and.
No, he didn't say he was going to take it. He said he would want to, but in the case of isn't Panama kind
he
of the
was
weakest
asking
link?
if he didn't rule out military action in Greenland. He said no, he wouldn't rule it out. So it's basically the same thing. But I think it's a lot of it's feeding his political base more than reality. I don't think there's a real intention by anybody to intervene in Panama. And let me tell you something else. Let's see. Back then, when we were negotiating the Panama Canal treaties, there was an exercise done by the U.S. Army of how many troops they needed on the ground to secure quote unquote the Panama Canal. And the figure back then was 100,000 soldiers. 100,000 U.S. soldiers. And then you look back and say, well, that was when Panama didn't have access to the Panama Canal, was it? Now we do. All you need is a ship going, exploding in one of the blocks, and the Panama Canal won't be operational for many, many years. Who could do that? Panama could. So no presence militarily by the United States or anybody else would secure the Panama Canal. The only guarantee of security the Panama Canal has is that we want it. We, the Panamanians, decide that we want it. That would not be the case were there to be an intervention by other countries.
So basically, but you don't think that there is an interest in a U.S. intervention?
No,
military intervention?
no, I think it's just
There. BS, as you said.
it's what I say, bull.
Well, very interesting. Last, more of a comment than a question. It seems to me that Panama has been bullied. That this president has, he called President Trump a liar at one point. He said that the U.S. State Department didn't know what it was talking about. He said several things, and the next thing you know, the agreement with China for the Silk Road was canceled or won't be renewed. He agreed to this memorandum of understanding, which will allow them to go into Sherman and other places. Also, from what I understand, this agreement allows for enhanced cybersecurity information. So, from the United States in Panama, which I think for some people could be of concern, maybe not. But it seems to me that that's almost blackmail.
You said it was a comment.
Yes.
Well, let's see. We cannot deny our historical relationship with the U.S., okay? We cannot deny that, in fact, the first user of the Panama Canal is the U.S. And most of the commerce that goes through the Panama Canal either goes to or comes from the U.S. So you could easily argue that the United States is it's Panama's first partner.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't change. And I don't think there's any need to rub it in, with an MOU. I want presence in Panama. I want to take back the Panama Canal. There's Chinese influence in Panama. This is all hogwash. I mean, there's no truth to that. So the only reason that I can think that he would say, the president of the United States would say that, is to maintain his ignorant political base happy, because they feel it's part of making America great again, make America a colonial power again, the big bully of the world. Well, that isn't happening. Period.
Very interesting. Perfect. You want to